Hello and welcome back. Today's video is going to be my updated Natasha Denona Eyeshadow Palette ranking. I am very excited to do this, and I've said that I'm going to be doing this for the last few months. I did this video in December, at the beginning of December. Since then, I got 3 new palettes and I did declutter one. The one that I got rid of was the Mini Nude Eyeshadow Palette. I really did like that one, but I had used it so much and I looked through the other palettes and I realized I had all those shades in her other palettes and the formula was better on those. So that is why I did get rid of that one. And then, like I said, 3 new ones since I did that video. My ranking has actually changed a lot since that video, which is why I did want to update it. Now, before I get started, I just have to say, obviously these are my opinions on these palettes. I actually do like all of them. Only the ones, the bottom 2, I'm so on and I'm not as into, but the rest I actually do love. So keep that in mind. Even the ones at the bottom, I really do love them. I think the Natasha Denona formula is great, but there is some variability from palette to palette. Her palettes do not all have the same formula. So FYI there. When I did this video last time, a few people kind of made comments insinuating that maybe I didn't know what I was talking about because I had some different opinions than other people did on these palettes, which is a little bit ridiculous. Obviously, we all have different tastes, preferences, and all of that. But keep in mind, I actually do like all of these palettes. Natasha Denona is one of my favorite eyeshadow brands. If you want to see more ranking videos, I have tons of them on my channel. I've ranked tons of different eyeshadow palettes by brand, all sorts of things. So check out my ranking makeup playlist. And then I also have an eyeshadow palette playlist where I have tons of other videos all about my favorite and least favorite eyeshadow palettes. So I will link both of those playlists in the description box, and let's get into it. Alrighty, I have 10 palettes and number 10, last place, sadly does go to this, the purple and blue palette. Now, I did do some recent videos where I talked about this palette and I said that I thought that it was particularly overpriced, and I don't know, I have mixed feelings on this palette. So this one is one of her $239 palettes. I purchased the bundle with this one and the blue and green for a total of $310, so I paid $155 technically for this palette. Definitely the most expensive makeup purchase I have ever made. The reason that this is in last place is I don't feel that the formula on this one is quite as good as the green brown one. It's still a really good formula. The colors in here are beautiful. A couple of the shades though I struggled with, and they just were not as pigmented as I would have hoped. It was a couple of these purples here I just wasn't as into, and I just think for a palette of this price, I feel like every shade should be perfect. So I like it, it's beautiful, the formula is really good, but I think the formula is a bit better on the green brown. Maybe that's because that's more neutral and neutrals are easier to formulate, but yeah, a couple of these shades gave me trouble. However, I think the blue side is gorgeous. These are amazing. The silver, you get a couple neutral shades in here. The only negative about this palette, I would say, it's almost all metallics. There's not very many mattes. There's a couple here, but I would have liked to see a few more matte eyeshadows as well. So overall, I still like this one. If you're willing to shell out the cash and you don't mind the price tag, I do think that you would like this. All right, number 9 is the Mini Lila. And I know that a lot of people really hate this one and it did not get that good of reviews overall. I actually do like this one. I think the formula is pretty good. I really haven't had problems with the formula on this one. The reason this is being ranked lower is I just think the color selection is a bit odd, and I said the same thing in my last ranking video. Having 3 purpley shades and then 2 very neutral shades, I don't know, a little bit odd for me, I think. I would have preferred maybe kind of an all purple mini palette. I think that would have been a bit more interesting to me. And these 2 shades, this one's more burgundy, this one's more purple. On my eyes, they don't look that different. However, this purple and blue duochrome is beautiful. And I was considering decluttering this palette and I was trying to look through my collection to see if I have a shade like this, and I couldn't find one. So, I mean, the rest of the palette isn't very unique. I do like the formula. I kind of feel like I'm keeping this because I love this duochrome so much. So I don't know, if I stumble across a similar shade in my collection, at some point I may get rid of this one. I did get this when it was 50% off for only $12. Full price for mini palettes are $25, and it really seems that the mini palettes are hit or miss. Like I said, I had the mini nude and I did declutter that one. I didn't feel that the mini nude was anywhere near as good as her larger palettes, so I don't know. Hit or miss. I do enjoy this one though, and this shade is beautiful. Number 8, I have the same feelings on this palette as I did in my last ranking video for Natasha Denona, and that is the Sunrise palette. This is one of her $65 size palettes, and I love this color story. It is so beautiful. I mean, the yellows, the pink, there's some duochromes. The only reason this is going a little bit lower on the list, I don't think the formula on this one is as good as some of these other palettes that I'm going to be talking about. I have several other of the $65 size palettes, and I think those are formulated better than this one. It's not terrible by any means. It's just a few of the shades are a bit more sheer, require a lot more building than some of her other colors do, and that's really my issue with this palette. However, I don't regret getting it. I love the looks that I get with this. It's just, you know, a few of the shades I have to build up a bit more. It's this pink, the red, and then the duochromes, which a lot of her duochromes are a bit more sheer, but these are more sheer than some of the other ones I'm going to be showing you. So I still enjoy this one. I just wish the formula was a bit better. Alrighty, number 7 is another one of her more controversial palettes. That is the Safari palette. And I actually really love this palette. I think it is fantastic. Pretty much all the rest of these I really love, and it was a bit hard to rank, to be honest. I think this is a great palette. I know a lot of people had some blendability issues with this one. Personally, I have not had that except with these two kind of bluish shades there. Those are a little bit more difficult to work with, but the rest of the palette, I've had no issues at all. I really love this formula, and I know I'm not the only one. I didn't get this palette for a long time until I saw Kinky Sweat's video. She loves this palette too. I listened to the advice she gave in her video, and I purchased it last year on sale for $65. I think it's still on sale for that price. Now, if I had paid, because this is one of her larger 129 palettes, I don't think I would have paid $129. Well, I know I wouldn't because I didn't. I waited until it was 50% off. I'm so glad I got it at that price tag. So I got it at the same price as her mid-size palettes. You know, I think a lot of us feel the same way. We wish she would kind of stick to these because you get the same amount of eyeshadows. And as someone who owns a lot of palettes, I'm not going to be finishing the eyeshadows that I need more product in there. But, you know, it is what it is. I got this for $65 and I'm so happy. I absolutely love it. Now, I usually use this as a companion palette. I don't do a ton of all matte looks. So for me, I usually use this with some other shimmers, but I think it's gorgeous, and outside of these two shades, I've had no blendability issues. Alrighty, this is where things really kind of change compared to my last video. Number 6, okay, I still love this palette, I just don't love it quite as much as I used to, and that is the Metropolis palette. So this is her only palette that she's done in this style where it cost $129, but you get 28 shades like you do in those other 28 pan palettes, but obviously the eyeshadows are smaller. So many people have been saying, why is she not coming out with more palettes in this size? I think she probably will at some point. I do prefer the smaller pans, you know, because like I said, I own a lot of palettes. Now, the formula on this one, it's amazing. It really is. I love this palette. The reason I'm ranking it lower is perhaps because I've used this one so much. This is my most used Natasha Denona. This was the first like fuller size palette that I bought by her. The first palette I ever got was the mini nude, and then I got this one. I think it's spectacular. My issue with it is there are some repeat shades within here. So you get 28 shades, but some of them are nearly identical to each other. Like some of these orangey browns here, on my eyes, they look pretty much the same. And a couple of these golds as well are a little bit repetitive. However, this formula, it's amazing. The metallics are so metallic. I've done a full review on this, by the way, when it came out, so you can check that out if you want to see more. And I've got tons of get ready with me's with this one. I still love it. I really, really do. My issue is a bit of those repeat shades, but even these kind of pops of color, like this blue is gorgeous, the greens, I don't really have much negative to say about it. I've just kind of fallen in love with these other ones a bit more. All right, number 5 is one of the ones that I got after I filmed the last video, and that is the Glam Palette. I avoided getting this for quite a long time because I have 2 or 3 other cool tone palettes in my collection, and I felt I didn't really need this. Well, I got this on some sale, I can't remember, in December, and I'm so glad that I got it. It's actually more different from the Anastasia Sultry palette than I thought. There's definitely similarities, of course there are, but I just think the metallics in here are so amazing, and I much prefer this formula over Anastasia. The metallics really do make this palette. They are so, so beautiful. I'm not as in love with the mattes, I will say. There's nothing wrong formula-wise with them, but they're a little bit light, and I actually often do use some mattes from other palettes when I use this palette, which for me is fine because I often combine palettes to get a look, but I guess I just wish she had a few darker shades. This dark brown, it's not as dark on my eyes as it looks in the pan, so you know, that's definitely a problem, and obviously for someone who has a deeper skin tone, they may have some issues with this palette. The metallics are amazing though, and I think those would look good on a lot of people, but the matte selection is not great. Formula though, absolutely beautiful. By the way, I have not been mentioning, 99% of the time I do use a wet brush, particularly with Natasha Denona, the metallic shades in her duochrome. Some of them can be a bit more crumbly, some are smoother than others. I think they look better with a wet brush, so I pretty much always use a wet brush, even with other palettes, but particularly I do think the Natasha Denona formula performs better with a wet brush. So absolutely beautiful. Pigmentation is absolutely amazing on the shimmers. I just wish the matte selection was a bit better. Number 4 is the Love palette. Yeah, I love this palette. It's so good. The reviews were mixed on this one, but I think it's amazing. I see no issues with this formula. It doesn't have those same issues that I feel the Sunrise palette has, where a few of the shades lack pigmentation. Not these. These are beautiful. The foiled shades, super metallic. The mattes blend really, really well, especially considering that some of these are more colorful shades. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I love this palette. This was my Christmas gift for my husband, and so glad that I have this. I love pink and purple eyeshadow too. It's definitely some of my favorite colors to wear. Yeah, and actually, and this deep shade here, Commitment, that one is great for deepening out the outer corner. It works really well. That is actually one of her cream to powder shades. Something I haven't really been mentioning is all her different formulas. So this one does have a couple of the cream to powder shades in here. Some of the other palettes have them as well. Some of them don't. Metropolis has quite a few. I like that formula. I like her mattes. I like all her formulas, the duochromes, the chroma crystals. She's got a few different types of metallics. I like them all, honestly, and I do feel like the Natasha Denona mattes are some of the best matte eyeshadows out there that I've used. I feel they blend very, very well. This palette is amazing. Formulation is fantastic. We are on spot number 3, and that does go to the Green Brown palette. Now, price-wise, again, I feel uncomfortable that I paid this much for this palette, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not somebody who buys a ton of luxury makeup, so I definitely was not going to be getting this for the $239, but like I said, $155, I don't know. It's still a lot of money, and I'm someone who has a lot of drugstore and affordable makeup. So for me, this was very, very expensive. However, like I said, I do feel that this one is better formulated, the purple and blue. That could be just because the colors, purple eyeshadows, may be a bit more difficult, although the ones in the Love palette I have no issue with, so I don't know. Take that for what it is. However, the neutrals in here are amazing, absolutely amazing metallics. This is one of the few palettes that I will say, a lot of these metallic shades are so smooth, I actually don't need a wet brush. This is probably the only one actually out of all of these that I don't need a wet brush for a lot of them. There's a bit more of the chunky ones, like this one does work better with a wet brush, but a lot of these greens and then these bronzy shades here, I usually don't spray my brush with those and they still look amazing and foiled. And the mattes, I mean, as usual, the mattes are amazing, easy to blend, very pigmented. Again, kind of similar to the purple and blue. I kind of wish there were like one or two more matte shades. There is mostly metallics in this palette, but the metallics are so beautiful. I do still love this one, even though, you know, I think the price tag is really, really up there, but I think that this one is good. This is one of her older palettes, so, you know, she's come up with new formulations since this time, but I still think that this is one of the best formulated. All right, we are on spot number 2, and this palette is one I have to say I have really changed my mind about it since I did my last ranking video for Natasha Denona, and that is the gold palette. This ranked much lower when I did that video. However, since that time, I've used this palette more. Today, I'm wearing this palette, by the way. And I've just come to really, really appreciate the uniqueness of this, even though it's a bunch of gold eyeshadows. Because when this first came out, I thought, okay, I have a million gold eyeshadows. It's one of the most common colors that you see in palettes these days, but this one is so unique. I just feel that these are unique golds. This one here, so I'm wearing this one kind of all over this part of my eyelid, and then this duochrome I put on top. This one on its own, it is definitely a duochrome. It's more of a sheer one. It's kind of a bit more of a topper shade. So I find that I layer it on top of other eyeshadows. I've worn it on its own and it's pretty on its own, but it looks better on top of other eyeshadows. And this gold, oh my gosh, this beautiful orangey gold is so pretty. This color here, this teal, it's amazing. The mattes blend so well. I love this palette, I do. I have previously said though that the metallics in this palette, they tend to be a bit more chunky than some of the other palettes. So this is one where I say I really need a wet brush, particularly some of these chunkier ones here. This side, not as much, but these, oh yeah. Without a wet brush, it's very difficult to use them. The only other negative I will say is just the selection of the mattes. These two colors, and even this one's lighter, but these two on my eyes, they look the same. You know, this is one of her $129 palettes, so I just wish she had changed one of these. That's really the only true negative I have to say about this palette. I truly appreciate how unique these colors are for gold eyeshadows. Absolutely beautiful. I mean, this here is one of the most metallic shades in my entire collection. I love the way this looks. I love today's eye look, and this is one that I'm now very excited to use it, and I love it a lot more than when I first got it. All right, number 1 is the bronze palette. I recently did a get ready with me using this one. It was my makeup low buy update, and I am in love with this palette. It is beautiful. Now, at first glance, this is one that looks pretty generic. I mean, we have so many warm tone eyeshadow palettes on the market these days. However, the metallics in here are so unique. A lot of them have a beautiful shift to them. They're so sparkling on the eyes. This is also one of the best formulated. Like I said, her formula varies a little bit. Sometimes her eyeshadows are just a bit more sheer than I would like. Not this palette. It is so pigmented. The metallics work better with a wet brush, but there's a few in here that I can use without a wet brush, but I usually spray them because then you get that really metallic look, which I personally enjoy. I think the selection of mattes is amazing. You do have like a darker shade that I can use in the outer corner. This color here, Rhodium, is pretty interesting, like taupey type duochrome looking shade there. My favorite row is like these metallics there. They're so amazing. So one of the best formulated, I think, considering this is, you know, a bunch of warm colors, I do think they're more unique than at first glance. Absolutely amazing. Like I said, did a recent get ready with me if you do want to see that. Oh, yeah, I think this one's beautiful. And I will say, I do think that this is different enough from her gold palette, which those are very different. This one pulls more orange. None of the shades in the gold palette pull orange. They're a bit more like yellowy type golds and duochrome. So it's very different. This one is very orangey red. So it's actually more different than some of her other palettes. And I mean, warm tones are definitely my absolute favorite. Honestly, I just can't stop saying good things about this palette. I love it so much, and I'm so happy I got this one. That is it for my updated Natasha Denona ranking. Please let us know your favorite Natasha Denona palettes. I'm very, very curious. There are still a few that she has that I would love to get, like the Biba palette. I've considered getting that one for a while, but that is one of her larger palettes. So yeah. Again, I do love all of these. The purple and blue and the mini Leela, I'm not quite as excited about those, but the rest of them are fantastic. Even the Sunrise, where I don't feel it's as good of a formulation as some of the others, I still do love it. So if you want to see my other ranking videos or other eyeshadow palette videos, I will link those two playlists. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.